So a game from one of my favorite series dropped on the Nintendo Switch 2 just recently. It's a game called Persona 3 Reloaded. Now, if any of you are familiar with the Persona series, you may be aware of the fact that Persona 3 Reloaded is a remake of an older game called Persona 3 Portable. And this game has been out on other consoles for quite a while, but this is its debut showing on the Nintendo Switch, specifically Nintendo Switch 2. So today I figured let's talk about Persona 3 Reloaded on the Nintendo Switch 2. This is something I've wanted to talk about for quite a while, but haven't had a chance to do it because I played it later than most people, and so it didn't really seem to make sense to do a review of the game when it had already been out for like a year on other consoles, so it just didn't really make much sense. But now I have that opportunity, so let's talk about Persona 3 Reloaded on the Nintendo Switch 2. But before we get into that, please hit that like and subscribe button. Help this channel grow. It means the world to me. I truly appreciate it. Alright, so I want to start this off just talking about the port itself, comparing it to the PlayStation 5 version. And what I will say about it is I was never really worried about this game. In fact, I kind of thought maybe they could have gotten it on the Switch 1 back when it came out, honestly, because Persona, the series, doesn't really rely on realistic graphics. It is more in tune to like an anime style, and so that can translate a lot easier to, say, hardware that isn't up to snuff, so to speak. Not to mention that it's also a turn-based combat game, so you don't have to worry about the frames per second being an issue or any of that stuff. So as far as performance, I wasn't really that concerned, and to be completely honest, it was fine. Like, I would say there's a few little issues that I noticed with the game, nothing like major though. It was sometimes like lighting would just be different than what I remember. It's definitely not as detailed or as clear, and that's to be expected. And honestly though, when I compare it, it's not even that crazy. It's relatively close enough that it doesn't matter. Like, you're not looking at that Vaseline screen kind of situation or anything of that nature. It's just you can kind of see a little bit more blur than you would on like the PS5 version. And anytime that I did actually notice it, just to be clear, to me it had to do more with the lighting and less with the actual detailed character outline or anything like that. Another thing that I have to make note of is the loading. It's not great, but it also wasn't great on the PS5. I don't know why. It was kind of weird. I expected, especially with what the game's contents were, the fact that you're running with an SSD on the PS5, like, why does it have a slow loading screen, or slower than you would expect? And I'm guessing that has to be on the back end and nothing to do with the hardware. Well, on the Switch 2, it's actually sort of comparable. Like, surprisingly comparable, put it that way. So yeah, as far as the Switch 2 port is concerned, I would give it like a really good, almost great level. You know, like if it was a number score, it'd be like an 8.5, something like that. It still isn't the absolute best way to play it, but if you have a Switch 2 and you want to play the game, this is a really good option. I don't think you're gonna feel slighted by paying full price for it. Although that is an issue in a way, because like I myself played it last year and I bought it for I think around $20 some. It was on sale on the PlayStation Store, and so I got it there. So yeah, if you do have the option to play it somewhere else, I probably would, just because you're gonna get it cheaper, and that would be like my main motivator right there, would just be the money. But okay, I want to talk about the game a little bit, and I have to say this is probably going to be the thing that will be the most controversial that I will talk about, because I have to let you know, I love Persona. The whole series is just fantastic. I love every one of those games. Every time they release some spin-off or something like that, I buy it, I play it for an incredibly long time, and I enjoy myself, typically. And for any of you unaware, Persona 3 really did need this upgrade. It needed an update, a remake, because Persona 3 Portable was incredibly limited. It was on like the PlayStation Vita, and so it didn't really have a lot to work with as far as memory or things like that. There was just a lot going against it, and so it did really need this, like I said. And while I think they did try to do a lot to almost bring out certain aspects of the game that they weren't able to establish or work on with the original, I still felt like they just tried to stay too close to the original. Like, they held on to that skeleton a little too much, because so much of the game I kind of felt claustrophobic. I think to an extent some people maybe gave it a pass because it was a remake, but when you think about it, this was the most recent major Persona series that had been released. Like, this was newer than 4, Golden, 5, Royal, all of those, and yet it felt like it didn't have as much as those games. And so much of it is just because of how limited everything felt. But just to be clear, the game itself is fun. It's a good game. It really is. Like, if I was gonna give it a score, I would say it's definitely above 7. But does it reach Persona level? And I don't know if it does. The story itself is pretty traditional for a Persona type game where you play as a student who has a special ability to basically beat the hell out of like demons, and there's this other world that is trying to interact with the normal world. You can go into that world and fight these demons, these enemies, and you kind of work with a specific team. You guys live all in a dorm. Something different about this one compared to a lot of the other ones is you kind of actually work for an organization in a way. There's definitely like a financier or somebody who's in charge of everything, and you do meet with them. So it's nothing like shady completely, but there is some knowledge of what's going on in this world. But it's like with many of the other ones, you were almost like having a bad head trip or something, and you were just gone and no one had any clue. This one, people know like there's something going on, but they don't exactly know what, and they know that there's certain people who can fight these demons or these enemies, and that is essentially where the game takes off. It is, like I said, a little bit different than traditional, but still stays really close to like that storyline, which is fine because I think all of us as Persona fans love that storyline and we love that premise, so let's keep that going. But it's just like your locations. It's some of the other things about it, like even some of the like personal communications that you have with some of your teammates, it doesn't always feel as open-ended as some of the other games did. And one of the big examples that I felt, anyway, is just where you fight the enemies. So in almost every other game, they would take you to a new location where you would fight these enemies, you'd make it to a boss, and awesome. But in this game, it's just a gigantic tower, essentially. Like, you spend almost all of your fighting time in the same tower. And while the background and some of the atmosphere changes a little bit, it doesn't change that much. It's still pretty much like this neo-industrial sort of background that you're fighting in, very dark, gloomy, which is fine, but it doesn't change enough for it to feel like a different place because it's not. It's just the same tower. Like, this is where, again, you will do a majority of your combat. And I think what makes it worse in a way when you compare it to the other games is like in Persona 5 Royal, there was this underground that you could keep going down, and the further you went down, the more difficult the demons were, and it was like a whole thing. But it wasn't even part of the main story. It was just like added on, and this like replicates that. Not even the major story from Persona 5, like just the kind of, I'm not gonna say throwaway because there's a lot to do in there and there's some important stuff that happens, but it's completely optional. And it was just almost like they took that premise and was like, okay, let's just make the combat all this. And it, I don't know, it for me didn't do it. I didn't enjoy how limited I felt, and not just the combat, but also outside of combat, outside of the school, different places that you could visit and go to didn't really seem to open up. And I don't know, I want to say 65 to 70 hours into the game before I beat it. And while it does open up a little bit, it still doesn't open up that much. And I just didn't really enjoy it as much as I would want to. But I don't know, that's just my thoughts on Persona 3 Reloaded. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. If I was going to give it a score, I would honestly give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Like, it's still a Persona game, and it's still like better than a majority of RPGs, JRPGs out there. But it, for me, doesn't live up to the Persona name completely. But again, that's just my thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I love y'all. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.